The G8 summit has officially begun as leaders meet in Northern Ireland today to commence a two-day series of meetings. But what can we expect? Peter Dixon of Commerzbank is on the phone with me now. Peter, in the lead up to today's meetings, there's been discourse regarding Syria, trade and taxation. But what agenda items specifically will markets be paying attention to?
Well, frankly, from a markets perspective, this G8 summit has left everybody feeling very cold indeed, because it's not really an issue which markets are paying any attention to. I mean, it does appear that the Syrian crisis is very high up the list of things for politicians to worry about. But so far as markets are concerned, we're not talking about things like exchange rates, which used to be the preserve of G7 meetings. And as a consequence, I don't think this is going to have any major impact upon market thinking.
The G8 summit is all about relationships. British PM David Cameron has received strong support from US President Barack Obama regarding global taxation reforms, while France has decided to stand against other European leaders over the inclusion of the French film industry in trade negotiations. Who do we anticipate to work together, and who will be putting a spanner in the works?
The $64 million question, really. I mean, I think that the UK and the US appear to be fairly close together on issues such as taxation. I mean, that's one area where I think there is general agreement. And I think it's fairly easy to bring on board the bigger European players onto this debate as well, because they generally are in favour of ensuring that corporates pay their share of taxation. In terms of other issues on Syria, well, it's not quite clear exactly where the governments have different views. I think that will emerge over the course of the next few days. But certainly the issue which will probably be discussed off agenda, this issue of a trade agreement between the EU and the United States, certainly is something where maybe the French do have a rather different view to some of the other key European players in this debate. So that may be one to watch, because it may well act as an obstacle to future agreement on this trade negotiation story.
There has been some discussion regarding the continued exclusion of China from the G8. With China at the forefront of global energy markets, foreign investment and trade, is the preference towards countries such as Canada and Italy over the world's second largest economy not an antiquated one?
Without a shadow of a doubt it is. And I think that's one of the reasons why the G8 meeting is has been received with such indifference by the markets, because basically the biggest player in terms of financial markets and economies, or certainly one of the biggest players anyway, is absent. And as a consequence, whatever the G8 may agree upon at this meeting, as long as China is not at the negotiating table, it's something which is unlikely to be enforceable. And I do think that in some ways the G8 is a throwback to the 1980s. We all remember the Plaza and Louvre Accords of 1985 and 1987, when that was the heyday of G7 cooperation. I mean, those days are long behind us, and I think the G20 summits are far more relevant in terms of the deciding big picture economic policy issues.
And lastly, touching on the taxation issue for a moment, in recent months it's emerged that many high-profile global companies pay minimal taxation, an item which G8 Chair Mr. Cameron has prioritised at this summit. Are we seeing tension in corporate equities, as new legislation could mean a big shake-up in the way international companies function?
It's not something which is at the forefront of market attention at the moment, and it's certainly something which is rumbling on in the background. I mean, I think the markets take the view that governments actually don't really mind too much about the corporate tax issue, because basically the corporates come and create jobs and they deliver benefits in other ways. I think the real issue here is political. There's certainly a big movement in many parts of Europe, and perhaps increasingly in America, to put pressure on corporates to pay taxes or more taxes. And that's certainly something which is going to emerge over time, but certainly I wouldn't expect any great changes to that legislation to occur over the course of the next few days.
That's all we've got time for, Peter, but many thanks for your comments. I'll be back tomorrow with a look at the commodities markets. See you then.